Right.
before we start.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Mac Bolan, and I'm here with Rob Sherrill. This is our weekly podcast, and we'll get right to it. Rob, go ahead. What do we have in 1A this week?
Well, let's see. Got to go back to. You kind of caught me a little bit off guard there, big guy. I thought we were going to talk about. Thought we were going to talk about something else, but
well, let's start with 1A, and we'll get to
but that's
2A,
all right.
3A, and then we'll go to the Ironman.
That's all right. We're
Okay.
good. We've got. We had some really interesting dual action last week. I mentioned some teams that got into the 1A rankings for the first that were about to get in for the first time, and they all justified my faith in them.
Good.
Pythian Oakwood is in. Mount Carmel, the other Mount Carmel is in, and Rock Island Dalaman is in. And so those are three teams that are new to the rankings. And looking at some of the big stuff, not a whole lot there this weekend. The 1A teams are all getting ready for their big showdown at in Springfield right after Christmas, the Abe's Rumble, and that's really a high. It's going to really from now on be a highlight event on the 1A schedule. One of the one big result from Tuesday that does affect a 1A team is the fact that Clinton beat Mahomet Seymour by a score of 42-24. And Mahomet was off to a very hot start last week. They were 8-0. But Clinton, with this senior-dominated team that they have this year, got the better of them on Tuesday, and they are going to need all that power because the regional and sectional assignments just came out,
right?
And they really affected 1A in a big way, with Coal City and Wilmington both being assigned downstate to go against the 10 or 12 top 25 teams that are already there. So it has really shaken up 1A in a big way. These assignments, you remember that in the days of the two-class system, we had a public league sectional in 2A, and of course, all those schools had to go to AA in order to keep their automatic qualifiers that they had in all the sports. When we went to 3 classes, which is almost 10 years ago now,
right?
The public league voluntarily relinquished all of their automatic qualifiers, and in exchange for that, they were allowed to all compete in every sport in whatever classification their enrollment put them. Well, fast forward to almost 10 years later, with the fact that several 2A schools have dropped to 1A this year, plus the fact that we have a lot of new charter schools and whatnot in the city. We now have kind of come full circle, and we've recreated what, in essence, is a public league sectional, but it's in 1A instead of AA, where it used to be.
Yeah.
And the big schools can survive any classification system. I don't know that 1A is going to as successfully survive it as the AA schools did back in the old days of the two-class system. And really, it's the Central Illinois sectional that has disproportionately suffered as a result of this, this change in where schools are being assigned. The Coal City Regional, instead of being in the Northeast sectional as they used to be, is now in the Central Illinois sectional. Those schools are being sent all the way to Olympia, south of Bloomington, for their sectional. And we have Coal City not only is hosting Wilmington, as they always have, but they're now hosting Clifton Central. They're now hosting Prairie Central. That's going to be 4 probably top 5 teams.
Wow, all in the same regional.
In the same regional.
That's insane.
And it's in the upper weights. It's going to be a dual meet between Prairie Central and Clifton Central. They've both got the 2 best upper weight hammer murderers rows in all of Class 1A. That's going to be a very, very interesting regional indeed. And of course, then they go, once they get done with the regional, they go south where they'll hit Clinton, they'll hit Olympia, they'll hit Porta, they'll hit those schools that that are traditionally in that Central Illinois regional. And the schools east of 57 are getting sent south to Vandalia. So Vandalia has more of a north-south look this year. And the Clinton is now takes in more than half the state of Illinois in terms of geography. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. So to wrap up, a lot of the news in 1A got made off the mat this week. With the release of the regional and sectional pairings. So I shed a tear for the for my guys down in Central Illinois. They're going to have that sectional. I think is going to have at least 20 state place winners this year, and maybe more.
Wow.
I think they could. It could be. It could be Downers Grove North last year, but
or Hinsdale Central this year.
More pronounced than it is this year, with the addition of some of those schools.
Wow.
So, so that's the news in 1A this week, and it's. I don't know if it's for the better, but I have no choice but to have an open mind about it.
Sure. Now, real quick, go back to Abe's Rumble. Date, location.
Prairie Capital Convention Center in Springfield, December 27th and 28th. It'll have 40 schools.
Wow.
And I haven't added up the number that are in the top 25, but it'll be 16 to 17 of the teams that are currently in the top 25 right now. So it will be 8 pools of 5 on the first day, and it'll be a bracket set up on the second day.
Nice.
And it'll be a barn burner. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out with 10-0 records at the end of those individually. At the end of that second day, there will be quite a few of them.
All righty. So moving on to 2A then.
Well, of course, as we discussed, once again, Washington made the big news of last weekend with their win over Oak Park in that quad up there. They'll this weekend they'll be at Yorkville taking on Crystal Lake Central as number one goes against number two. St. Rita is also in that quad, so Yorkville, which just got into back into the 3A top 25 this week, is hosting three of the best teams in 2A for a really nice quad. And so that, in terms of just 2A teams, that's a really big one. There's some the Mascoutah tournament downstate will take in some of the big 2A teams, as well as a 3A team or two. Collinsville and O'Fallon are in that. So you have Mascoutah at the southern tip of Illinois. You have the Harvard tournament at the northern tip of Illinois with a lot of the 2A schools from that end of the state. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the big events coming up in 2A this week. So also Geneseo coming over to Hinsdale Central. So we're looking forward to seeing how well they do. The resurgent Geneseo, I should say, based on their performance the last week and a half.
All right, and we'll move on to 3A, and also I'll go ahead and talk about Ironman a little bit. I made the trek out there again, as I always do. Talking real quick about the Oak Park Quad, and I just found this out myself, because when I heard, that Washington had beat Oak Park, I was a little bit surprised. Then I found out that Oak Park was forfeiting 2 weight classes in that duel at 138, 195. So don't know what to take away from it. We'll see. Both teams will be at the Clash and might even, depending on what happens seeding-wise, we might even get a rematch. So I'll be looking forward to that. So 3A, other than the Ironman first,
couple big duels this weekend, of course. Montini is at Marmion tomorrow night. That's a big one.
Yep.
And then Saturday, Huntley is hosting Marmion, Mount Carmel, and Lockport in a really monster quad.
That's a big quad, yes.
It's a big one. That's it, and that's at Huntley. So you're going to have to drive a little ways, but it'll probably be worth the drive. Other things that are going on tomorrow night. This is an interesting match that I would not have expected to see on a conference night. But Glenbard East is going to be at Libertyville for a duel tomorrow night. That's a really nice non-conference duel on a conference night. So if you're up in that area, that's another one to go see.
Yeah,
and so that's a good one. Those are the two highlights for tomorrow night. Also, Lockport is at Lincoln Way East tomorrow evening. So another big one there. And finally, another one matching top 25 teams. Neuqua Valley is at Glenbard North tomorrow evening. So we'll get a real good read on how far Neuqua Valley has progressed as they invade Hudson Gym.
Yep. And on what you were saying, Libertyville's actually got off to a pretty good start this year. We have a fair amount of the teams up north that have been doing pretty good. Libertyville, Barrington.
I think that's a duel that I think will go down to the last match. Libertyville has done very well in duels to this point. They had a match against St. Charles East, their only loss that went down to the last match. Mm-hmm. So, and Glenbard East, a very strong dual meet lineup. So that's going to be a match with some drama.
Sure.
A couple of a couple of the other quads going on Saturday. Lincoln Way West is hosting Moline, Wheaton North, and Cary Grove.
Good.
That'll be a good one. Glenbard North will be back at home again on Saturday. They're hosting Hononegah and Prospect, and so that'll be a good one. And there's a we'll get to Hinsdale Central in a little bit, but
sure.
There is a new tournament on Saturday. And it is the Lake Park tournament is no more. A lot of the teams that competed in the Lake Park tournament over the years are getting together at a new tournament at Niles West, which has been named the Robert E. Porter tournament in memory
yes.
of Bob Porter, the coach there, of course, back in the 70s and 80s. And again, a lot of the teams that competed in the Lake Park tournament are there. Actually, Lake Park is not one of them. Lake Park got into the Glenbrook South tournament instead.
Yeah.
So they will not be part of that field, but Barrington will be in it. Conant will be in it. Jacobs, Lincoln Way East, Stagg, and which just got into the top 25, and Warren. So those teams are the headliners at that tournament, which has 17 teams and should be a good one.
Nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk Ironman. I mean, that's the biggie when we talk about on a national scene. I don't think you or I were surprised at Blair Academy. They pretty much demonstrated why they're ranked number one.
Blair placed 10.
Yep.
Graham placed 9. Graham had 3 champs. They had 4 in the finals. Blair had 2 champs. They had
5 in the finals.
5 in the finals and 7 in the top 3. So
interesting.
He was at Blair won their last matches, and Graham lost a lot of their last matches.
Correct.
So
I was just going to say because Blair had 5 in the finals, and the first 3 all got beat, but they won the last 2.
Right.
And again, like we always talk about, particularly about the Ironman. And while I was there, you looked at the quarterfinals. Now, going into the quarterfinals, Blair was still in a really good position. Graham and Montini were tied. And like I've always said, in the Ironman, quarterfinals really is the make or break. Because if you get into the semifinals, you get place points, you're guaranteed no worse than 6th place. And Montini had a great showing. I honestly thought at one point they had 3rd place locked up, but they got edged out by a half a point by Wyoming Sem. They had a little bit of a rough quarterfinal. They still put 2 guys in the finals. Both lost, but pretty much a good showing by Montini.
Don't think they were. Placing 7 is a record for them.
It's good. It was good.
I don't think they expected to get shut out in terms of titles.
Sure.
But certainly, but I think in terms of
depth,
balance.
Yeah.
I think they ought to be pretty happy with with how that came out in terms of they went winless at 220 and really didn't do much above 160.
Right.
But a pretty good showing.
Yeah, well, they got a place out of Peterson at 195. And even though he didn't place, they got a nice win from their heavyweight McNichols. I was sitting there, and at that point in the tournament, he pins the heavyweight from Paris Graham, and they're tied going into the quarterfinals with Graham. And again, you know, it was just a very tough quarterfinal for him. I think like their freshman 106-pounder, Nain Vasquez, he scored a lot of points. He wrestled very well, even though he didn't place. And, of course, Ortiz and Styles both did a great job. And especially, you know, with Styles losing an ultimate tiebreaker to Mitch Moore, quite frankly, and I watched the match against Bill from Lake Highland Prep. His right shoulder was never even close to being down. I think the referee made a horrible call on the pin on that. But the minute I saw him drop and he had his hand raised, I thought, you know what, this guy's going to call a pin no matter what happens, and he did. And then Styles went on to beat Moore in the place match. But again, Montini, you know, with 7 placers and as a dual meet team, it'll be very interesting to see, because right now going into the Clash, I think they're the favorite in that kind of format. And we'll get to that, of course. I don't want to do any Clash preview now because that's way down the road. The team that really impressed me was Mount Carmel. You know, they came in with a fairly young team, and even though, you know, Coleman made it to the finals match, they had a few placers, but they had guys who scored points. And, you know, one of the things you notice about the Ironman, weaker teams have guys who go 0-2. But Mount Carmel, you know, yeah, they had a few guys go 0-2, but they got guys who at least scored points. They had placers, and a pretty good showing for what we would consider, at least in my opinion, and you probably agree with me, a young and up-and-coming team. As far as Mount Carmel. Do you have them in your national rankings? I'm just curious. I mean, they did debut in the Fab Five for Intermat.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's okay. You know,
they could, you know, I don't know that they're necessarily far off. I mean, I'm looking at. I mean, I'm looking at their. You know, I'm looking at their match by match here, and I'm seeing a lot of 1 and 2s.
Oh yeah, they had a fair amount of guys who got eliminated.
Lots of weights. I'm seeing a lot of 0 and 2s.
Sure.
You know, I mean, yeah, I think. You know,
I mean, me personally, when I went in there, I did not expect them to finish as high as 14th or tied for 14th.
Yeah, they got to. I mean, I'll say this. I think you know, if I'm you know, I thought you know, I haven't put him in this in my win column, but maybe I should. I thought, you know, Coleman had a spectacular tournament.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
And really, when the reason he may not get in is I'm focusing on guys that were not in my rankings previously that had multiple quality wins,
Sure.
and Coleman was already in. But you know, when you look at, you know, beating Monday and beating Beal, or that's
Sure.
two big major wins. I actually gave Styles my number 1 star for the week, even though he only finished 7th, just because
he did great though. No,
of the people that he beat.
Oh, absolutely.
Plus, not only that, but the fact that he owns a win over Coleman this year.
Absolutely. He beat Coleman, and he beat Mitch Moore. I mean, he lost to Mitch
Sure.
Moore, but he went 1-1 against Mitch Moore. He beat Coleman, and yeah, I agree.
Beat in Contreras, beat beat the kid that finished third in the state in California.
Yep.
This is Styles. Styles is a kid that, even though he finished only 7th, is really getting close to my national top 25.
Sure, and a guy like Matt Ortiz, again, he went in, had a couple of, he had some close losses. He, but he eventually ended up placing. And I think going forward, particularly, and again, I don't want to get too deep into the clash right now, but it puts Montini, with the depth they have, as being a very, very tough team to beat in a dual meet format. Now, Buchanan's out. St. Edward will be there. Park Hill, Missouri will be there. So it'll be an interesting field. And there's several good Illinois teams, several good Minnesota teams. Lockport managed to place a couple. I think Baylor, Fernandez, and I talked to Josh Oster about this, because he was absolutely livid and berserk over the match that he lost. And, it's one of those things where, it looked like he had a takedown, looked like he had back points, and the referee discounted all of it. One of those things as a coach that, sometimes you can't do. But I will say this, and I managed to speak at length with Corey Haddad, who now, basically runs the tournament, the seedings, etc. And he made a list of referees that either A, continually were making bad calls, that B, several teams were complaining about, guys that he's not going to invite back. And also teams that showed up and had several wrestlers that never won a match, never placed, and that won't be invited back. I kind of like the fact that he's paying attention to a lot of that stuff. And now Marmion Academy. Now, Marmion Academy came out, did not place a single wrestler. They did score some points. But Marmion Academy right now, and as you know as well, they're missing a lot of starters. I know Gross isn't in the lineup. McKenna's not in the lineup. At this point, I'm kind of interested to see what they show up with down the road, when they get a full lineup. Because they're obviously with a full lineup, one of the better teams in Illinois. But right now, early season, they're struggling.
Well, their lineup obviously is still a work in progress.
Oh yeah,
and until they get it where they want it, they're only marginally going to be a factor.
And again, we'll see down the road. Now, I want to talk real quick about the one thing that went viral all over the place, the so-called Shoegate. I was there. I watched the match between Silva and Woods, and I will say right up front, I absolutely, positively respect the referees. I know how tough it is to put on the zebra jersey, carry the whistle, etc. I will not accuse Joey Silva of trying to purposely pull his shoes off. But at the same time, Woods did nothing wrong. When he showed up, he had Velcro covers over his laces. And for the referee to penalize him when he did nothing wrong was way out of line. And that's probably a referee who won't be coming back to the Ironman based on conversations I had.
How is that assignment made?
Well, random. When they got in that finals match,
don't they do something like prioritize these matches and make sure their best officials are on the most competitive matches? That's what they do downstate in Illinois.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no.
I'll
be brutally honest. In an earlier match where they had in a semifinal where they had, and it didn't affect the outcome, fortunately. And then I'm talking about the Melendez match. They had 2 officials on the mat. Now, Melendez hit a takedown, literally locked the ankle up, and they called no points, even though, from my perspective, where I was standing right there, and I know the second referee looked right at it, it was a takedown. It was a no-brainer. It was a takedown, and it was not called. It fortunately, Melendez still won, so it didn't affect the outcome, but it was a total blown call by a second official who should have been doing his job, because if you're going to have 2 officials on a mat, the second official should have made the takedown call. And I mean, I stood literally right there when it happened, and I was like throwing my hand up with 2 fingers, etc. But it's and I don't want to get into a lot of the complaints and everything as far as the history of refereeing at the Ironman. I feel very confident, though, with Corey now running it, that some of that's going to get cleaned up. And he had a list, like I said, of about 4 or 5 referees, which I guarantee ain't going to be coming back. And like you said, you want your best guys on the mat in a tournament that, well, arguably is the toughest national tournament in the country.
If I'm sitting there with a Woods against Silva final, I'm going to make darn sure that I've got the best official and the best 2 officials in the house on that mat for that match.
Yep.
And if that's and if they don't do that, they're not doing their the tournament officials are not doing their job.
Yeah, and the thing is, he had, when he showed up, the wrestling shoes he was wearing had a Velcro cover over the laces.
Yeah, I mean,
the bad call on that, it should have been like a headgear coming off or whatever. It should have been a referee's timeout. He should not have been penalized. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was standing right there and I watched. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I don't get it.
And, it happened the first time, then the second time. And then, of course, Izzy ran out on the mat and he was upset. And I understand, being upset over something that was an egregiously bad call. And then Mike Palazzo, who is another great guy and a great coach, and then he ran out there and then everybody ran out on the mat and it went viral, etc. Of course, later they all shook hands and everything was diffused. Of course, people will argue about this ad nauseum afterwards. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, being there as a witness, the referee blew it. And I don't know what he was thinking, but it is what it is. It happened the way it happened. And I think Woods ultimately got penalized for something he was really not guilty of.
Shouldn't have been penalized for.
No, sure. Absolutely not. So anyway, as far as national rankings, Blair did what Blair does. They had an outstanding tournament. Graham finished second. Like I said, I thought Montini had third locked up. They got edged out by a half a point by Wyoming Sem. And then pretty much, St. Edward, a lot of the other top teams, which we thought would perform, did.
Yeah, really not very much in the way that I would consider horribly impressive in terms of, am I looking at these teams for spots in the top 25? My opinion is I'm really not sure.
Sure.
And, I'm not super impressed at a LaSalle that only brings about 8 kids and had a lot, and had some guys that didn't win a match. I mean, Avery Zirkel's done a great job with that program, but I don't know that they're there yet. I need to see some more regular season results before I jump on them.
Yeah. On that note, Malvern Prep which was highly ranked early in the season for Pennsylvania. I actually expect
they don't have a great team for this type of event.
No, they've got some good individuals, but they don't have depth.
They don't have a great team for this type of event. They have, they'll be a solid third in the national preps, and that's and that's what they are.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed by Parkersburg South, but of course,
sure.
You get the transfers they got. Yeah, I guess you would be impressed.
Yeah. And that's West Virginia, right? Parkersburg South,
yes.
West Virginia. Yeah.
Josh Humphreys transfers in. Luke Martin transfers in. Those two guys scored a lot of points.
Yes, they did. So looking forward now, of course, we know we've got the Rex Whitlatch coming up. We know we've got a couple of key dual meets.
Let's pull up.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Some seeds while we got it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my shout out to Mick Torres for these, of course, of ilwrestle.com. He'll be running the computer operation up there, and as he always does.
Oh, Mick always does a great job. He's one of the preeminent tournament directors in the state.
Absolutely. So be sure to follow what's going on IL Wrestle. If round by round there, to take a look at what's happening in Hinsdale Central. So I think looking at the seeds, I think they come out. I think he did a pretty nice job of this. Jake Rundle's number 1 seed at 106. Dylan Amico of Plainfield North, Saw2 of Rockford East. The other luminaries there. But 13 pretty decent weight. Nate Cummings of Downers North and Matt Strauss of Downers South, both undefeated going into this tournament. You also got Johnny Bloom of Deerfield. Looks like he's going to stay up there. Katron Frazier of Glenbard West, who could see Cummings in the semis. They just met at a dual meet last week, and Cummings pinned him. So it's good. So we could have a rematch in a hurry there. Briscoe Watson of HF and Derek Singleton of Hinsdale South also also rounding out the seeds there. Hassan Johnson of Brother Rice will be the number 1 seed at 120. With Josh Ogunsanya, number 2, Kyle Schickel of Lamont, number 3. They're both undefeated. It's a pretty good weight class with Tommy Frezza of Stevenson, Austin Marquis, who's off to a great start from Manuka. Brad Rosen of Downers North and Luke Hankhouse of Geneseo. So that's a pretty good weight class at 120. Fabian Lopez of DeKalb, the number 1 seed at 126. Could be a pretty nice semifinal between Nico Bolivar of OPRF and Drew Nash of Lamont. They're both undefeated.
That'll be a good semi.
Sam Lopez probably will be going up against Sam Wojcik of Sandburg in the other semifinal. Zach McDowell of Manuka. Probably wrestling Wojcik in the quarters there. Moving on to 132. Pat Nolan of Sandburg is the number 1 seed. Eddie Bolivar of OPRF, number 2. You'll probably have Dontrell Johnson of Rockford East in the semis, who's undefeated. This is a really good weight class with another undefeated, Robert Major of Downers South, only the number 6 seed. could have could potentially have two undefeated guys in a semifinal there. Justin Coderhant of Belleville West and Aaron Castellanos of Glenbard West, also in the top 6 there. Ambrose is the number 1 seed at 138. Providence got into the Hinsdale Central tournament this year. Tori Early is the number 2 seed, followed by Jaden Lawrence of Bradley, Will Vasevic of Glenbard West. Andrew Vasevic is undefeated, and he could have Andrew Rizzo of Geneseo in a quarterfinal. Both of those guys are undefeated. And another quarterfinal could be Early against Adam McDowell of Manuka. And Caulfield of Brother Rice could have Lawrence in a quarterfinal there. 3 undefeateds at 145. Patrick Ryan of New Trier is the number 1 seed. Liam Drury of Hinsdale Central, number 2. Those are 2 of the undefeateds. Josh Ramos of Providence, only the number 5 seed here, even though he's undefeated. Garrett Bass of Belleville West is number 3. Ordonez is number 4. Ramos 5. So Ordonez and Ramos possibly in a quarterfinal, and Peyton Nimsicon of Glenbard West, number 6, followed by Jake Rayson of Deerfield. At 152, Michael Wommeldorf of Rolling Meadows, undefeated, the top seed. That's this kind of an interesting weight. Jack Tangen of New Trier is the number 2, followed by Kenny Kirstein of Deerfield, who's been in and out of the lineup.
Right.
Logan Johnson of Belleville West, Christian Comitas of Deerfield, Muzi Sicella of Stevenson. So that'll be an interesting weight. This kind of pretty much goes 8 deep with Johnny Acevedo of West Aurora and Kevin Countryman of Providence. Only the 8th seed, maybe against Wommeldorf in the quarterfinals there. At 160, Cole Smith of Providence is the number 1 seed.
Right.
I think he's got, as things stand now, he's kind of got the tougher side with, he would have the winner in a semi between Fisher and Emmerich, a potential quarterfinal matchup there. Luke Skokna of Hinsdale Central is the number 2 seed. Probably against Dominic Murphy, state qualifier for Brother Rice in the other semifinal on that side.
Yeah, and of course Cole Smith being the runner-up last year at 152.
He's going to have to earn it to get to the finals.
Yeah. Yep.
Middlebrooks is the number 1 seed at 170. Interesting semifinal on the other side, but between Schmerbach of DeKalb and Paul Gliva of Brother Rice. Probably either the Middlebrooks looking probably at a winner of a quarterfinal between Whole House of Downers South and Bosco of Sandburg. So that's the lay of the land at 170. Hirschfield of Sandburg, the number 1 seed at 182, still undefeated. Logan Roach of DeKalb, Alex Aruna of Lamont, probably the semifinal on the other side. Hirschfield in the semis, probably either Tommy Dantzler of HF or Will Giluli of Brother Rice. Villalobos, no surprise, top seed at 195.
Yeah.
He's 15-0. As it stands right now, he would have in a semifinal. So 2 undefeated guys there. On the other side, Dan Wee of DeKalb and Cody Goodman of Deerfield, who have already met each other this year, with Dan Wee winning, may be wrestling again in a semifinal. So Goodman to maybe so 220. Hennessy from Matt Hennessy of Plainfield North, returning state place winner, the number 1 seed. Logan Anderson of Providence, number 2. He'd have Connor Briley of Manuka in a semifinal. And Jim Flavin of Downers North is the number 4 seed there. At heavy, Miles Ruffin of Brother Rice, 3rd in the state in 2A last year, is the number 1 seed. And Jeff Griffin of HF, still undefeated, is the number 2. He's looking at a possible semi against Ethan Smith of Downers North. Good quarterfinal on the other side. Billy Blazer of Geneseo, who's still undefeated, against Boyce of Sandburg. The winner would get Ruffin in a semifinal. So that's kind of how things stack up at Hinsdale Central.
So it's a deep tournament.
And it's, we have a situation where a lot of these weight classes might go 3, 4, 5 deep with highly ranked wrestlers. We don't have a whole lot of really stacked weight classes, but still quite a few undefeateds as we go into Hinsdale Central weekend.
Okay, so team race, who's your favorite?
Well, the way it's I would say the way it's seeded, it's kind of looking like Oak Park and Sandburg in the top couple of spots. I think Providence has a shot if they'll get Smith to the finals if Ambrose and Ramos wrestle well.
Yeah,
and if Anderson does what he's supposed to do, they're certainly looking at top 5 finish. So I think
question for Providence.
So I think it's so it looks like Oak Park, Sandburg, Providence to me.
Okay, so for Providence, is Jacob Lindsay wrestling in this tournament, or is he still out?
He is not.
He is not. So he's still out. Not. Okay. Which is unfortunate because he would have been probably the number 1 seed, obviously.
No, Heimlich is in the lineup for them at 120. So
okay.
So that's kind of where we stand right now. So it'll be 4 guys carrying them if they if they're going to make a run.
Okay.
So that's how it shakes out. I think that's your team race right there.
Sure. Okay, and that's going to be a Friday, Saturday deal. And of course, we've got the quads Friday night. Got the Marmion Academy versus Montini dual meet, and as we mentioned before, the other quads that are going on, some of the other stuff. So if you get a chance, folks, get out there, go watch, go support. And
it'll be a good one at Hinsdale. They take care of you.
Yeah, and they do a good job. They do a really good job. And like I said before, Mick Torra is probably one of the best tournament directors in the state, no doubt. All right,
that tournament runs like a top for sure.
Absolutely. So, folks, we'll be back next week with our podcast on Thursday, and there's a lot coming up. especially.
Thursday, yeah. Let's just a quick look ahead.
Yeah.
Thursday, we'll be previewing the Dvorak next Thursday.
Absolutely.
That'll be a Friday-Saturday event.
Dvorak coming up, and then down the road, of course, we've got the Clash, the Cheesehead, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of good Illinois wrestling. And I haven't seen the tournament field yet this year for Dvorak. Last year, we know that Ohio had it.
I do have a list right here.
Ah, good. Go ahead. Shoot it out real quick.
Let's take a look. Of course, my Mount Carmel, one of the team favorites, certainly. Glenbard North is there. Huntley is there. Let's go through the Illinois teams first. Belleville Althoff is in. They'll certainly, with their individuals, be way up there in the team race with the Brown Eagles and Chase Biddle.
Right.
And a couple other guys, Christoph and Federico. I'm sure they hope that they'll be among the medalists. Mm-hmm. Mount Carmel is there looking at our 3A teams. Edwardsville, Glenbard North, Hononegah, Huntley. Libertyville, of course, is there. Mm-hmm. Libertyville, we know what they could do in tournaments this year. With their, they've won 2 of them so far. Neuqua Valley, Oswego is there. Plainfield South, Wheaton North is there. Wheeling got in this year. Mm-hmm. Yorkville is there. Willowbrook is there, so there will be a Jack Jessen sighting.
Yep.
And of course, Dakota is back with some of their individuals. Crystal Lake Central is in from representing 2A. So and as far as the IC is there, so it'll be interesting to see what Bianchini contributes to the mix. Some of the out-of-state teams that will be in, of course, Iowa City West is back.
Good.
So you'll have Nelson Brands, of course.
Right.
Francis Dugan transferred in from Pennsylvania. He's at Iowa City West. So, if you didn't get enough of LaSalle from the Ironman, LaSalle will be at the Dvorak. So that will be they will be in the house. Mason, Ohio is coming back.
Who won it last year?
They were hit hard by graduation.
They're not going to be the team they were last year.
Hamden at heavyweight is really their only contender this year. Mm-hmm. Thompson, Alabama is coming in. Nice. So Sam Latona, I would expect to be in the finals. Gabe Hicksonbaugh at 126 should place. Mm-hmm. The teams that are in coming down from Wisconsin, Luxembourg Casco is coming back. They've got 5 state place winners. McQuantico is in. Milton is in.
Milton.
Slinger is in, and Waterford is in. So we could potentially see Jessen go against Jared Craddock. And that would be a great who's a Wisconsin commit. So they're
that'd be a good matchup.
That is a great future Big Ten preview. Sure. So, but we'll have more on that next week.
Yeah.
So, so that's your that's your quickie Dvorak.
All right.
Dvorak taste until next week.
All righty. And like I said, we got a lot coming up here, folks. Please click like on the podcast. We love your comments, positive or negative. And we're going to keep doing this weekly. We may miss a week or here or there. I know because when the Clash comes up, I'm going to be heading up there on a Thursday, so we'll have to postpone that particular one. But everybody, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We want your feedback. Have a great night, and go Illinois wrestling.